So with this phone number, I will not see your name. We're not going to know who submits the question. So this way, it gives you a safe place to ask whatever question you want. So with this phone number, you can pull out your phone and you can type it in like you're texting a regular person, and you can ask whatever question you want through that, and then we'll get it up here on stage, and then we'll just answer it. It's pretty simple. But first, I want to answer. Oh my gosh, I'm already getting the questions. Those are funny. But just want to introduce who you guys are up here with us, and we got to get your relationship credentials. How long have you been in a relationship? Oh, I got to take my watch off because it's buzzing with the questions now. Oh my gosh. But how long are you married? How long have you been in a relationship? We need your relationship credentials. Go for it.
I'll let Lauren go first.
Start us off. What's your relationship credentials?
Seems a lot more formal. Relationship credentials.
Because my relationship credentials don't exist. Because I'm single.
That's all good. That's all good.
So that's why we asked some other people to be up here.
Look, single is a credential, man.
That is true.
It sure
that is true.
Don't discredit it.
I go for it.
Yeah. So my name's Lauren Nicewender. I guess my relationship credential is being married for about 4.5 years. I don't know. Feels a little crazy to say, but yeah, I think that sums it up.
Let's go. So 4.5 years.
4.5
kids,
years.
no kids.
No kids.
Okay.
No pets.
Awesome.
No nothing.
What about a pet goldfish?
We don't know.
No pet goldfish?
Nope. We got nothing.
No, nothing.
No. What about you? Nothing. Relationship credentials.
Relationship credentials. I married my high school sweetheart.
Aww.
We dated for almost 7 years before we got married. Go ahead. And then we got married, and we've been married working on 11 years. This August will be 11 years. I have two kids. Amen. Have 2 kids, Piper, who is 8, and Theo, who is 6. So
let's go.
We're there.
So they are a lot more certified than I am. So that's why we asked them to come. So it'll be great. So they were both prepped with a question first. And I got this question. I hope so. I texted you.
You had a question?
I texted it to you. And it was a question I found off of Google of the top 7 relationship questions that people Google. And the question was, do you give somebody, like if they are a mature Christian, like they're both on the same, they're both equally yoked, mature Christian guy and girl, do you at least give them one chance with a date? Like, do you say, hey, maybe I don't see them attractive or maybe I got something going on, but I'm at least going to give them at least a chance, right? I'm at least say, instead of saying no to begin with, I'm at least going to say yes to one date and feel it out and to give it a chance. Whoever wants to attack it first can go. We'll get both perspectives, though, guy and girl. We'll get both perspectives. But we're going to try because we do have a lot of questions. So after like 3 minutes, I'm going to hit the rapid fire, and then we got to like close it. So just so you guys know. Whoever wants to take it first.
Well, I would say first from a girl's perspective, the first question I would ask her is, are you interested? Like, do you like him? Do you enjoy being around him? If the answer is no, then like you're under no obligation to go on a date. Now, like just going on a date, there's nothing wrong with that either. But I think it's important just to even ask yourself, like, do I want to like get to know this person a little bit more? So that would be my first question that I'd think about or ask the girl. So that's just the first thing that comes to my mind.
That's good.
All right, so the question is, should you give them a chance?
Yeah.
As long as they're a Christian, you should give them a chance.
They're a mature Christian. They're not sketch.
I mean, I think so. I don't think you have to give them a chance. I think what Lauren said is true. But if you're not giving people chances, then don't go complain about how you don't have a relationship.
That is it's a valid point.
True.
It's a valid point. It's a valid point.
I mean, I'm just saying, right? Like, if you don't give anybody a chance because, like, I don't know, like, so should you give them a chance? Yes. Or her a chance? Yes. If you feel like, hey, this could be something. There could be something there.
You don't have to give everybody a chance, but sometimes you got to put yourself out there.
That is true.
Just
Not everybody has to.
All right, here you go. So our first texted in question, does God call people to singleness for a lifetime even though they want to be in a relationship? Yeah, take a swing at that one.
I'm going to let the pastor take this one.
Does God call people to singleness for a lifetime even though they really want to be in a relationship? I can personally testify to this answer.
Did you write that question?
This was not for me. This was not
Is
for me.
God calling me to singleness? I'm just
But
so old at 23. There's nobody that's been here yet.
I can
for me.
relate. LOL.
Like, hold on, say it again. Does God
call people to singleness for a lifetime, even though they really want to be in a relationship?
Does God? I don't know. I think that's a hard question to answer. When you say, "Does God do it?" Is can He call you to singleness? Yes, but I don't think He would create you with the desire, with that strong desire that you are created for someone else to marry, and not give you the satisfaction either in Him or in a mate. So I don't think that He would allow you to like, hey, if you're feeling like, hey, I'm supposed to be married, either He is going to fulfill that desire for you, or He will fulfill that desire in you with another person. I don't think He's just a cruel God, because that kind of puts God in a cruel position. It's saying, hey, He made me and I desire marriage, but He's just saying no to me. Like, I think it's about fulfillment. I think it is about does He call people to singleness? For sure. But does He call people to singleness without fulfilling them wholly in Himself? No.
I think it's good. We did, fun fact, shout out to the podcast. We talked about this, if you guys want to listen back, with what Paul talks about with singleness in 1 Corinthians. Me and Cam had a nice debate over it a couple months ago. So that's up there if you want to talk about it even further. But Paul did say, live as you were called in there. But for further info on that, you can just check out our podcast.
I would also add, like, how are you determining that calling? Like, are you looking at because the question was, is God calling me to singleness even though I have a desire to get married? So I would say, are we looking at our circumstances to determine our calling? And to Cam's point, like, God created marriage as a good thing, and there's different seasons for different things. So I would just say, like, what are the things that you're thinking about to determine what that calling is, and also giving room to God, for God to grow that desire and also move in that desire as you bring that before Him too.
Love it. All right, next question. Who pays on the first date, and then who pays for following date? So after the first date, who pays for the first date? But then we got the second, third, fourth, and so on. So who pays for the first date?
I'll defer that one to the female.
If it's a date, I'm expecting the guy to pay. Full stop.
So if it's a date, we're expecting the guy to pay. Okay.
I think it formalizes it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, like, I'm taking you out. I'm going to pay for you. Now, every single time, we can talk about that down the road. But if it's a first date, I think that's a kind act to say, like, hey, I got you. So maybe not every time, but I do think a first date.
Yeah, I think it's valid. I think the guy should pay. I think the guy should pay just based on how God created us, right? That God created the man to be the leader. You should be covering. And girls, if he's not able to pay, you should probably question why you're with him. No, I'm just kidding. But I think at least being in a position as the man to say, hey, I am going to pay. And it sets just, I think, the relationship off on the right foot. I think just with God. Now, I will say that Katie paid for a lot of our meals because I didn't have a job. So that's a thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't need to be every time. Financial situations are different. So yeah, there's room.
But the
There's
first
room to
date.
talk. But the first date.
I would say start it off right, guys.
There we go. At least go to Cookout or something. Like, just stick to your budget then and pay for it.
But then,
just
the second and third, you could be like, hey, you make a lot more money than I do. And, like, let's.
All right, here we go. Next question. In what way did God strengthen your decision in marrying your spouse? Was there a specific moment you knew? So I'm guessing, was there a specific moment you knew, like, hey, this person, marriage potential, like, we're going to make it happen? I'm not married, so I can't answer that one. That's for y'all.
A specific moment.
It was that magic moment.
Yeah,
when you saw him and you
wow.
were
Where
like,
the heavens
yes!
opened and the angels were like, Ryan
Like-
is the one. Now, I don't know if there was a specific moment, but Ryan and I were friends for about 3 years or so before we pursued dating and then engagement and marriage after that. So I got to see Ryan over seasons, and I also got to see him when he wasn't trying to put his best foot forward, right? Because in dating, you're putting your best foot forward. So I would say I just got to see the guy that Ryan was, his heart, how he lived in the good moments, how he lived in the not so good moments. And then I would say when we were thinking about dating and marriage, we were both seeking the Lord of just like, is this direction that you're calling us to? And I won't go through the full story, but there was one scripture that God laid on both of our hearts, and it's actually inscribed on the inside of our wedding ring. It's John 15:5. And I think that God can and does speak through his word. And I think that dating and relationships is a space that you need to invite the Lord in, because he will speak if you create that space. So that for us in our story was a scripture that God shared for us, as well as just seeing one another over seasons of life.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, Cam? Was there a specific moment you knew?
The first time I saw her, I was
Love
like,
at first sight.
I'm just kidding. Mine is way more complicated than that. Because we dated for a long time. We were in high school, and I wasn't necessarily in the best position with Christ. And so there was a lot of really bad mistakes on my end, and trying to say, hey, I don't know. We started dating in high school. You go to college and like, well, maybe I want to like try other things or try other people. And like, this is all I've ever known. And so I made bad decisions. And, but once, I made those things and tried to do other things. And, it was through that God made it very clear. Like, she knew way before I did, because I was just messing around. Like, I was, hey, this is nice. I like this relationship, but I wasn't fully sold. And I love what Lauren said, because I think it's important as you're establishing your relationship with whoever it is, have the goal in mind and have Christ in the middle. And so for us, it took me longer to get to that point because Christ wasn't in the middle. And I was kind of torn between this whole worldly idea of like, hey, I need to try all the ice cream flavors before I pick which one I want. And that's just a terrible way to do it. And, a lot of regret, I think, in a lot of those things. But there was a moment when we went through just some hard things. And I knew that she was the one that I wanted to do the rest of my life with. I was like, hey, I do not want to do life with anybody else. And she was the one. So there was a moment.
But it was through the hardship moment.
Yeah,
right?
it took me longer to say, hey, Christ is in the middle, and this is who he has for me. And but from that moment on, there wasn't any question in my mind, because he had brought us both together and had confirmed a lot of things. So
here we go. And this one is a very applicable question for the time that we're in. Probably a lot more applicable than it was like 20 or 30 years ago.
What time are we in?
2023.
Okay.
That's what I mean, like year 2023. Does a woman initiating the relationship make her the leader in the relationship? So just the initiation part. So does the woman initiating the relationship make her the leader in the relationship? If so, is it okay for a woman to be leading within the relationship?
I think to answer your first question, there was like an if so.
Yeah.
But I think to answer the first question right off the bat is no. I don't think just because you make the first move means that like you assume that position for the rest of the
So in that case, ladies, shoot your
relationship.
shot. No, that's good. That's good.
Then she leaves me the harder question. I got it. So yeah, I don't think the first part, I think there is a lot of space to say, hey, tell somebody you're interested. As far as does that make you the leader in the relationship? No, I don't think so. Like right off the bat, like just because you initiated doesn't mean that the guy can't lead. And I do believe that there are, we believe in just specific roles, right? We believe that God created the order of creation. And I think that gets a bad rap. I think women and men and how God created man first, woman next, the helper, the leader, like it gets a bad rap in our culture that is very feministic and women empowerment. And I don't think it has anything to do with that women, girls, that you are lesser of any kind of value, incapable of leading, right? Because there are moments why God puts us together that we're better together. And if the man is a good leader, he listens to his counterpart, his wife, his woman, a lot of times to make the decision. But ultimately, the man should be responsible. And I believe that the man is responsible before God. Now, whether he gives up that mandate and gives up that authority is really his thing to be before God. But I think God makes that clear in Genesis, just that the order. And then when the whole fruit fiasco goes down, sin enters the world, he comes looking for the man, not the woman.
Yep.
And
That's good.
so I don't think it makes you the leader. It could be. Now, if he's unbelieving in their situations, I believe biblically there are things where you should be leading in faith and pushing him and being the neck.
So that kind of steers to the next question of
Yeah.
unbelieving. Is it possible to have a relationship with someone who is not a Christian, or a healthy relationship? Is it possible to have a healthy relationship with someone who is not a Christian?
A healthy dating relationship?
Yeah.
Uh,
That's the way I'm interpreting it. I'm going to say healthy dating relationship.
Who wrote the question?
We're going to call somebody. It's you not anonymous?
It's
Anonymous?
It's you.
It's a secret.
It's
It's one of those words.
It's unanimous.
But is it possible to have a healthy relationship? So dating relationship with the intent of marriage, is it possible to have a healthy relationship with somebody who is not a Christian?
Here's how I'll break it down for you. I'm a sports guy. Triangle offense, right? So if you have a triangle, right? How many sides are on a triangle? 3. Okay, so if you and your girlfriend or boyfriend are on opposite ends of the bottom side of the triangle, and God is at the top, right? If you're working together because God is Christ and you're getting closer to God, you ultimately get closer together. If you are working against each other, you will get further apart. And so I would say it's not healthy, it's not good, it won't be. You'll constantly be working against each other if your desire is to glorify God and have Christ in the middle, and you're saying, hey, I'm going to missionary date this guy or missionary date this girl with a hope that then we'll get on the same page. Even as you're dating, you're going to get further apart before you get closer together. And that's not a great foundation to start a marriage on. And so I would say it's not the healthiest. I have seen things, but I would say, hey, just the whole unequal yoke. If you know that Christ is in you, he's changed your life, we should be looking for people who are aiming for the same target, who are aiming to live that life the same way.
Yeah. Anything you like to add? And we also did, fun fact, we did a podcast about are they Christian enough to date and defining what it means to be equally yoked. So just as you guys know, it's another reference. We dived into the Bible about that.
If you just did podcasts on every episode, why are we answering questions?
It's a great tool to be like, hey, we just spent 20 minutes talking in depth about this topic. Go check it out. All right, here's a good, very, very practical question. What is a appropriate level of physical intimacy before marriage?
I'll let Lauren answer that one.
So in other words, how far is too far? Where's the line? Defer to the second half.
Wow.
How far is too far?
First of all, that's not the right question to ask. How far is too far? Because that's with the assumption of I want to go as far as I can to sin and in sin
Okay.
without being, without being broken and going to hell. So it's not a good question. Not saying that you're a bad person, whoever wrote the question. I think it's valid. Like, hey, how far can I go? I just think about the premise, think about the motive, right? You're asking how close to fire you can get before you get burnt. Like, you're asking how close can I get to just straight, going to hell without actually going to hell? Like, how can I live all this? So I think it's a bad question with a bad motive.
Yeah.
But if you want to go into details, okay.
Let's go.
I'm good. But I will say that the first thing that Ryan did was when we started dating was like, hey, let's establish boundaries. Let's get clear on what this looks like so that when we're together, we're not tiptoeing around.
You've already talked about it.
We know. And he initiated that conversation. Again, it looks different, but I think it is really important to have that clarity right off the bat. Because at the end of the day, dating isn't really in the Bible all too
Talk
much.
about it. Come on.
You see marriage, but dating's this very interesting space of you're not committed to that person until you stand before God and friends and family and say, I do. I am entering into this covenant. So I think it's just can be a dangerous space that you want to be careful with, that you want to make sure that you're being cautious of how you're sharing your heart and what ways you're sharing your heart, because at the end of the day, until you stand at the altar and say, I do, that's not your husband or your wife. And I think that there's just specific things and spaces that you want to save for that person. And I think that spans physical intimacy. I think that spans emotional intimacy. So those are just some things that I think can be important to think about, of like the consequences on the backside of just playing with fire. And it's hard because there isn't a ton of clear I guess examples of dating in the Bible. So
Yeah. There's a couple questions tied around this same point of how do I know if the person I'm with is the one? Or I'm trying to figure out and explore, like, does God have a specific person for me? Like, is there the one? I'm trying to find the one, the guy, the girl. I'm trying to find the one. There's a couple questions tied around that of, like, can I miss it? Can I date somebody who's not my one and then I totally miss out for the next 70 years or whatever it is? Like, is there a one specifically? Crickets.
I might put a hot take out
Hot
here.
take, let's go. We love a hot take.
I do.
No, let's
hold
go.
me accountable here, but I do think that if two people are truly believers, Christ followers, that you could make a marriage work because you have the same values, you have the same view of how you're building your life, of how you view marriage. And I would say the one, I think our culture can really, let's say, not give us the greatest example. We can be in this idealistic state of, I need this person to look this certain way. And I would say, like, are your preferences, like, in line with God's priorities for who he has called and asked you, and just kind of set as a standard for marriage? So I think the one can get confusing, and I think it can sometimes hinder us from just kind of enjoying getting to know and just exploring. And then I would say, yeah, kind of wrestling with are my preferences and what God says is a priority for my spouse, like, do they line up? Am I putting too high of a standard? Because at the end of the day, I don't know, Cam, like marriage is hard, and I want to make sure that, like, I'm going in with somebody that, like, will go through the trenches with me. So all that to say, I would maybe bust the myth of the one and just kind of really reflect and think about, like, what am I really chasing after, and is this like romanticism or idealism? Is that like hindering me from actually seeing what God's calling me to or has for me?
That's good.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's a
That's a great.
that's
Let's go.
That's a spot on take. Yeah, I think we got sold kind of a bill of goods with the whole idea of, like, there's this magical moment where, like, you're just, my heart intertwined and that was it and now we're married forever. Like, that's a feeling. And if any of you guys know, feelings are fleeting, right? Like, they go away. Like, one day you could love somebody and then the next day they just make you mad. You don't love them anymore, right? Like, have you ever had that moment? Or you're just angry at them, right?
That ties into our next question. Look at that.
But I think what she's saying, though, marriage, like, we're talking about marriage. Or how do you know if there's one? Marriage is a commitment above everything else. It is a commitment to the other person. Those vows that you exchange, the things that you stand before God and say, I am committing my life to this other person, is two becoming one. It's work. It's not always just this magical rhythm, this magical thing that just happens, and it's just like, hey, every day I wake up and, like, I just want to, I'm so complete by you. Like, no, it's work. You wake up and you choose. You wake up and you commit, and the Lord really blesses, those that do that together. The two becoming one, and just that commitment to each other. So if you're dating somebody and you're hesitant right now, you're like, hey, they could be the one, but I just don't have this feeling. Don't let feelings lie to you. And don't let feelings make you run away. Like, really pray about it, really lean into it and say, hey, this is the person I can commit the rest of my life to.
Yeah, that's good. All right, rapid fire round. We're going to go through a lot of questions. So, like, 1 minute per question. Like, you just get 1 minute.
1 minute.
We're going to go.
Right.
How do you not lose interest in the other person throughout a relationship?
You love them? Like, how do you not lose interest? Stay committed. do things together, have experiences, talk about things that you maybe have kept from them. I don't. There's different things. I think there's a lot of ways to keep that fresh.
Any thoughts on how to not lose interest?
Yeah, I mean, I would say share things that are on your heart, on your mind. Like, make sure that you're filling yourself up as well. Like, don't always just look to what the other person's doing. I think when you're finding things that you're interested in, the other person's finding things that they're interested in, it makes it enjoyable, and it makes you have things to talk about, to connect on. So don't just like put everything on that person. Like, make sure you're filling yourself up, and yeah, just making sure that you're keeping yourself
Yeah, that's good.
interested.
How do you know if you're ready for a relationship? Like, how can we self-examine to know, like, hey, I'm in a healthy place to go and start attempting to date, being in a relationship?
I think as Christians, or as at least as people who are professing of faith, like have a solid foundation of who you are in Christ first. I think that's really the only prerequisite for me. It's like, hey, know who you are in Christ, know your worth, know your value in Him, apart from anybody else that you're going to be dating, apart from anybody else you're going to be with. I think that's probably the only criteria. I think we talk ourselves out of it a lot, but saying, hey, if you know who you are in Christ, I think you can go into a relationship.
And I would say, if you can answer the question of not looking to that relationship to fill just something in your heart, to Cam's point, like going in already full because you're full in Christ, and like you're not looking to that relationship or that other person to fill something in you. I think that can be a really good, healthy starting spot.
Good. All right, this is a very practical question right here. Not that the rest aren't practical, but this is practical. What is a good first date? Any
Do not
ideas?
go to the movies. Do not go to the movies. You need to go somewhere where you can really talk, where you can like do something like, I don't even know, anywhere else but the movies, pretty much. Like, go to a really long dinner. Go to this, like, if you love food, like go somewhere. Hibachi Steakhouse is also not a great place to talk. It's very loud. They're setting things on fire, smacking handles and stuff. Me and Katie's first date was a Charlotte Bobcats game, which they don't exist anymore. They are now the Hornets. We went to a Bobcats game, so it was solid 2 hours sitting next to each other, just talking about things that we enjoyed and things that we love, and it was around sports. So I think things like that are good.
Any thoughts for a good first date?
Yeah, I think just something that's fun, where you can connect, where you can conversate. Our first date, it was a quarter date. So
A quarter?
Ryan,
What is a quarter date?
Yeah, Ryan gave me a quarter.
Oh, like he gave you a physical
Quarter.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a lot more to the story, but yeah, he gave me a quarter. When I was ready to kind of enter into the relationship, I gave him back the quarter, and he said, we're gonna use this for our first date. Got the quarter. First date was hopped in the car.
You went
He
on a
said-
date for a quarter? Like, you only paid?
No.
That's impressive.
No. I mean, that would have been.
What's the name of that restaurant?
Yeah, I wish. Gumball machine. So anyways, we were driving, and every time we hit a stoplight, I would flip the quarter, and if it was the heads, we went right, and if it was tails, we went left. And when we found a restaurant that we both looked good, and we wanted to sit down and eat, we stopped at the restaurant. So like, got some quality time in the car, got some quality time at the restaurant, like fun little unique way to, don't put a ton of pressure on it, just have fun. Like,
That's good.
That's
That's good. There you guys go. That's a great idea.
There you go.
Everybody's gonna show up with
dating.
everybody's
Now
gonna
you
shout up
got
with
some-
quarters next week.
Hand them out like, hey,
every
just
guy's
give this
gonna show
back when you're
quarters next
ready. Just give this.
Great way to
Inflation.
put it
You better
on
come with
the
a dollar.
girls'
You better come with a dollar next week. Inflation. You can't even do nothing for a quarter.
All right, here we go. This is a good one. Actually, they're all good. How can you stop letting past traumas keep you from dating and opening up? That's a good one. How can you stop letting past traumas keep you from dating and opening up?
I would say spend time just focusing on yourself and seeking healing before you think about entering into a relationship. Like, I would say I've experienced a lot of past traumas. I didn't know Jesus until I came to college. So there was a lot of unwinding, a lot of like rewriting the narrative that I thought about myself, and also like the paradigm of relationships. Like, that was a whole new thing that the Lord needed to reconstruct in my life. So I would say look to Him, seek him in prayer and really ask him to. I don't want to over spiritualize this, but like his word says, like he will renew your mind. Like he will renew spaces and hurts if you open up yourself for that healing. So I would say seek healing first, just so that you aren't operating out of a space of past hurts and just past places that maybe were places that God didn't call you to or have you in, or wasn't kind of in his design. So seek that healing first, because it is he wants to give that to you.
Good. Any other thoughts?
What was the question again?
How to
The specific question.
how not to let past traumas stop you from going dating further, or how to address those.
I got you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what Lauren said is great. I think there is a time for addressing it, right? There's a time for like dealing with it and not carrying that. I think like relationship trauma is a lot like church hurt, where we have to understand that it's not the church that hurt us, and it's not relationships as a whole that hurt us. It's the person, and to be able to walk in forgiveness, be able to get through. Hey, it's not everybody is that person or that relationship or that thing. Because I think we can get into that generalization. I think that's where the enemy wants to put us. It's like, hey, every relationship I get in is going to be like this, but understanding that not all of them are going to be that way. And I think there's a lot of just forgiveness. Again, I think it comes back to identity, Christ, coming to him, really allowing him to create forgiveness in you, forgiving even yourself and forgiving the other person, to move forward with trust, because trauma can dictate whether you trust somebody or not, and you can't have a relationship without trust.
Yeah, that's good. What struggles did you face while you were single, and how did you overcome those obstacles to strengthen your walk with Christ?
Pass.
You probably pass it off to the single person.
Can
Why don't
say
you
it one
answer
more
that,
time? Can
Josh?
say it
What are
one
you
more time?
struggling
Yeah,
with
I think
right
this is a
now?
good one too.
I'll let you guys go first, but I will.
Go ahead.
I will.
Say it one more
What are
time.
my struggles right now?
What struggles did you face while you were single, and how did you overcome those obstacles to strengthen your relationship in Christ?
I was a hot mess. I still am a hot mess. Like it doesn't just because you're dating or married doesn't mean that everything's fixed up. But I would say a big thing for me that I struggled with and still struggle with today is just this idea of like, where do I find my affirmation? And for me, it was a lot in people, in success in sports or academics or those different things. So going back to Cam's point, like really anchoring myself and finding what do I stand on as my foundation, my identity was a big part of just making sure that was firm. But yeah, the people pleasing and where I was getting my affirmation from was a huge struggle. And I think just I did a year of singleness. I recommend it. Like
I've done 23 years of singleness. I got you beat.
That's not true. That's not true. That's a hard question, I think, for a guy to answer, because I know I was a hot mess and I was into a whole bunch of things that I should not have been into, which then drove into relationships. So when you think about what you watch, what you listen to, how you spend your time, it was beginning to understand myself. Like, I think the best advice is come to the end of yourself and find Jesus. I mean, first of all, you got to deal with that. You got to find your identity in him before you're confident enough. So with relationships, and especially relationships that you're saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody to marry, deal with your stuff before you get there. Try to deal with as much of it, any of the sins, the addictions, the habitual kind of like discreditation, approval stuff. Like, deal with those things before you get there. I think that's a big part. That's a big part of it. Like, just kind of overcoming those things. So yeah, that means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Good. I'll speak into this a little bit too. I think we get a struggle while single is that just because you do things the right way or follow the Bible does not automatically equal relationship. Like, just because you yourself, you're pure, you're disciplined, you're in the Word, you're in prayer, like you're checking all the Jesus boxes, doesn't automatically equal relationship. right? And I think sometimes we get frustrated, like, man, but God, I did this. Like, I really prayed for this person. I read my Bible. I was showing up in church. Like, I checked off all the boxes. I was obedient. I surrendered. And then the relationship still doesn't work out. And then we get in that place of, but God, why didn't this work? I did everything right. Like, where did I go wrong? But just that idea that just because you do everything right with your own spiritual walk does not automatically equal relationship as if it's an equation. Like, if I do all these Jesus things that are awesome, plus pray for this person equals relationship. So that's a struggle, I would say. Just that idea of still walking in faith, walking in obedience without saying, but God, is there, like, I'm just losing hope through this. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's good.
At least that's for me, the single person.
Yeah. I think it's the idea of like relationship flows from relationship. Just like, hey, have you ever heard the phrase like it's easier to get a job when you have a job? Right? Because you understand like what that takes. And then when you're unemployed, people are like, well, why you been unemployed so long? Like, what's the deal? So I think that relationship does flow from relationship, but I think as believers, as like what you were just saying, is that your relationship with Christ, being anchored in that relationship, learning who you are, learning who he is. I think that relationships, quality, healthy relationships flow from relationship. Like, you know what you're looking for. You know what to say no to. You know how to do those things a little bit better. It doesn't guarantee a dating relationship, but I think as you're building community, like you guys are doing, relationship flows from relationship. And it's not those things that are filling you up, but it's uplifting. And so I think what you're saying is true. Like, hey, as a single person, deal with that relationship first.
We'll end it with this, and it's not more of a question, it's more of an idea that you can speak to. So like I said, I was preparing questions for this, and I Googled, like I added the top 22 Google questions about dating relationships. And
top 22? That's so
20,
random.
Well, I took them from different websites. So I took 7 from here, like the top 7 on this one, top 5 from this one, put them all together to make like the biggest.
Okay.
So is this Josh's top 22?
No, this is not my 22. This is frequently asked questions Google of dating relationships just worldwide, not specifically Christian.
Worldwide.
And going through them, 50%, 11 of the 22 can all tie back to solving the problem of just simple communication. Like it was, how do I tell him I like him without telling him I like him? Or how do I start flirting without being too obvious? Or how do I know if he likes me back without like finding all this? Like it was like all these different questions that can tie back to the practice of communicating.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So if you want to speak into that, like just how important communication is. You don't have to walk around with these assumptions of, oh, does he like me? Does he not? Does she like me? Does she not? Am I just a friend to her? Or are we just communication? If you guys want to add anything to that before we close it.
Yeah, communication is the key. Other than trust and love and all those things. Communication unlocks a lot of things, right? For me, I'm a terrible communicator, right? With my wife. My wife will tell you, I am the worst. She will tell everybody that I am the worst. Thinking that in my head right now. I have work to do. Communication is a big deal, and learning to communicate, learning how the other person communicates is a big thing. And it's taken us 11 years of marriage to get to this point. So 11 plus 7, that's 18 years of being together. And I'm still not great at it. But for you guys, I think communication, it does help a lot, because what communication does is it brings clarity. Like when you hear somebody say it, when you can say it out loud, it brings clarity. And with clarity, you can make a change. Or I tell Josh all the time when we talk about clarity is kindness. Like
Yes.
even though it may come off sometimes, it's like, hey, I'm not feeling
It's
that.
not clean
And
sometimes, but it's kind.
it's not clean all the time, but it's kind. It is kind, because clarity allows the other person to understand, and then it allows them to respond. Either they're going to and to make a clear decision based on what you are saying and being able to communicate. So, if you're waiting and there's somebody, you're like, hey, I haven't told them. I just expect them to know what I'm saying or know how I'm feeling. Like most arguments, most fights come from a miss of expectations. Katie expects me to do something, but never tells me to do the thing. And then she gets mad and she gets frustrated. I do the same thing to her. You should just know what I'm supposed to do, but I've never told you. I've never told you that's what I wanted. I never told you that's what I need. I've never told you those things. So how are we supposed to know? So communication is vital. Most of the marriage counseling that we do is because people cannot talk. They're telling everybody else what they want, but have not told the one person. They're telling everybody else, why can she just not understand that I like her? Why is she not picking up on the signals? Like, bro, probably because you didn't tell her yet. Like, she
Come
doesn't
on.
know. And I think the same thing for the guys, the same way. You know, communication is kindness. It brings clarity, but it's not always clean.
That's it. Anything you want to add?
Mic drop.
Communication?
Nope. I was gonna say just clear is kind. Like you hit it right on the head, and you can't expect somebody to read your mind, and you might as well just get it out there and know whether or not this is something that you want to keep pursuing. Like I'd rather get it out there and have my whole self be out in the open rather than trying to kind of, put on a false self or somebody that I'm really not. Like I'd want to know that somebody's in it for me. And then from a marriage perspective, yeah, I mean, it is the most important thing, which I'm not very good at either. So I would say Ryan would probably say, like, I'm a terrible communicator. It takes work. And it also takes, like, for me getting past the fear of, oh, I can communicate my needs. And this person is a safe place to be able to receive that and respond to that. So, yes, clear is kind, very kind.
That's good. That's good. So if you're wondering, like, hey, does this person like me? Just ask them. Or, hey, how do I tell them I like them without telling them I like them? Just tell them you like them. Like, using our word. Everybody's like, no, I'm not doing that. No.
I'll text them later. I'm not going to tell them. That's
Using
weird.
your words. I promise you guys, because I
Get
see
the AI bot to, like, send a message for
just
you.
something. Literally. Because I see people our age, like, going through that. Like, how do I do this without actually doing this? But you're hurting yourself and the other person at the same time. And we build up this idea that one text message or one phone call is marriage, or one date is marriage. Like we put so much pressure on just that conversation or just that date that it has to end in marriage, then we just get startled. So just take the lid off the pot, relieve the pressure, and communicate.
No, ask. Like, I
There you
remember
go.
Ryan, when we were grabbing coffee as friends, he was like, what are your intentions? I'm like, whoa. Whoa. Okay.
Come on, King.
Okay.
Dude, you
And
should have
I-
totally had Ryan up here. What am I doing here? He could have given the quarter date idea and, like, what are your intentions over coffee? Like, that's a cheese.
So if you don't know, just ask. It might catch the other person off guard, but it forces them to really think about what they want.
That's good. Well, that's cool. Hey, appreciate you guys. Can you guys give it up for Cam and Lauren being with us tonight?